Critics agree. The Legend of Zelda is a pretty high-quality franchise for the most part, and of the ones that I've played, they're all pretty dang good. The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time is widely regarded as the greatest video game ever made. It's not. At least not anymore. But I don't really think that was up for debate when it launched back in 1998. It still holds up surprisingly well by today's standards, but that's because so many third-person action-adventure games patterned themselves after the precedent that Ocarina of Time set for the genre. Dark Souls, and even more importantly, Lies of P, wouldn't even exist were it not for the game design that Nintendo kinda got right on their first try. We live in a world where there's a Bloodborne-inspired video game about Pinocchio that has P in the title, and you have Ocarina of Time to thank for that. My family never had a Nintendo 64, but by the time I was about 4 years old, N64 emulators could run on just about anything. And as a 4-year-old, I was a dumb baby. But my older brother figured out how to
acquire a legitimate Nintendo 64 cartridge
and through a little bit of
dump the game's data through entirely genuine means.
Play the game on my family computer. I can't tell you how many hours I spent running around Kokiri Forest, throwing rocks, cutting grass, talking to the same NPCs over and over again, and generally just not really playing the game at all. Look, there was a lot of reading in it, and my comprehension at the time was a little limited, so I kind of had no idea what to do most of the time. Also, it was very scary. But none of that mattered to me, because, as an idiot child, I learned to hack. Project 64 came with a built-in cheat engine as part of the emulator itself. And yeah, it, really broke everything, but if I was already going to play the game the wrong way, I might as well go all the way wrong, you know? Ocarina of Time is normally a very guided, linear experience, which was something I almost entirely ignored as a little kid because I had way more fun moon jumping all over the map and placing unlimited bombs wherever I wanted. As I got older, I did manage to play Ocarina of Time and later Majora's Mask in the way they were actually intended to be played, and I had a great time with both. But my fondest memories of those games were of the times I spent completely ignoring the intended experience the developers had crafted and doing whatever my little kid brain decided sounded fun. This is why Breath of the Wild resonated with me so strongly. The game just kind of throws you off the side of a cliff and wishes you the best of luck. There's a story to follow, but at its core, the game is about exploring and discovering the painstakingly handcrafted open world. It's not a game to complete, it's one to experience. And clearly, this design philosophy was a recipe for success. The Zelda series has always been relatively popular, but it's never reached the commercial success of Nintendo's flagship brand. The one with the red guy. But looking at the sales figures for Breath of the Wild, for the first time ever, this generation Zelda game actually managed to outsell its Mario game, and 2 of the red guy games. So it's obvious that removing the regimented linearity of past titles in exchange for basically complete freedom resonated with the largest audience the series had ever seen. A series which up to this point has been a very heavily guided experience. Exploration was always encouraged, but it was only ever an option, not a prerequisite for reaching the end credits. That one guy who made that one video about Ocarina of Time a while back said it best.
But if a game is telling you to do specific things with marks on a map and a sequence of which things to do and specific instructions, you're not discovering a world. You're being taken on a tour. You're no longer a pioneer adventurer, you're a guest at Disneyland.
I think we've all kind of been feeling this open world fatigue for years now, where you have a map filled with objective markers and the entire game is structured around checking them off a list. That really only works if the core gameplay loop is actually fun. Otherwise, it gets pretty exhausting pretty fast. Breath of the Wild works by giving you a general direction to head in, but the path from point A to point B is filled with distractions along the way. You can skip all of them and go straight to the objective marker if that's really what you want to set your mind to, but the game is built around the moment-to-moment experiences with a hugely reduced focus on the big picture. Your singular objective from the second you wake up is beat the big evil thing, and everything you do in between is to help you achieve that goal. Shrines are everywhere. And you can ignore all of them, but they'll increase Link's health and stamina. Unlocking memories are an optional objective, but if you care about the story, they'll help flesh out the world and answer questions about what happened to put it in this state. Every aspect of the game, from the dungeons to the story to the core gameplay loop, is a choice, and one that you have to make for yourself, which could include skipping it entirely. It's an amazing game, but when the legend itself becomes optional, it kind of stops being a Zelda game. And this is what makes Tears of the Kingdom such an appealing title to so many of the longtime fans of the series, but without abandoning what made Breath of the Wild so compelling. The story is back, and it's, actually pretty good. There's an underlying mystery that permeates every aspect of the game, and the story implications of what happened in the opening minutes follow you through the entire thing. The main quests and story flashbacks are, like the prior title, both optional, but the impact of what Link is trying to accomplish follows you through the game's entire runtime. To be clear, it is not a complete return to form. This is still very much Breath of the Wild 2. So, as before, once you get past the tutorial area, everything you do is entirely optional, including the story. There's a much more presently guiding hand, gently nudging you in the direction the designers wanted you to go, but you can ignore it and do whatever you want. In addition to the more obvious story improvements for longtime Zelda fans, they needed to make the open world aspect more appealing to the newcomers who only played Breath of the Wild. And man, if you're watching this video, there's a really good chance you've seen some of the absolutely insane things people have been building since this game came out. It's been a little over a month, and it's already completely broken. And that's a good thing, by the way. From the get-go, it's obvious that the two games are aiming for very different experiences. In Breath of the Wild, you're told,
"Hey Zelda, sorry to wake you up." Wait, that's me. "Dear Link, please come to the castle. There's a boy here who's making me very uncomfortable. I've left a Wii U gamepad for you. Yours truly, Princess Zelda."
So you grab the thing, walk out of your bedroom for the first time in 100 years, and now you're playing the game, baby. All of your core abilities are unlocked in the tutorial area, and once you get the last one, you go talk to the Ghost King of Hyrule, who says, "Hello, I'm the same voice actor as Brock from the Pokemon anime, and I cannot do an English accent to save my life. Here, have a thing." He gives you a paraglider, you jump off the plateau, and now you have full reign to the entire map. None of it is off limits. Everything you do from that point forward is your decision. The game gives you a general direction you could probably start heading in, but you're under no pressure to do anything at any point. It is a completely 100% open world game. Which Tears of the Kingdom does as well, but the heavier emphasis on story becomes apparent the minute you launch the game. You're greeted with an introductory sequence that sets the stakes for the story. You're addressed by name by the primary antagonist, and it becomes abundantly clear how much work you're cut out for to beat this guy. He's not just some ominously swirling cloud of bad juju, he's a person. He's powerful, and he's angry. To top it off, you're left with a lot of unanswered questions to hopefully solve as you play through the story. The setup in Breath of the Wild is intentionally pretty chill. You have a single objective, and that's kill the big bad guy. But Tears of the Kingdom ups the grandiosity by giving the big bad guy a backstory, which I won't spoil here, but it's surprisingly good, and it adds the context that was mostly absent in Breath of the Wild. And this is precisely why I feel the way I do about this game. As the Zelda series became more popular, the criteria for beating each subsequent one became tighter and tighter, to the point where the spirit of the original game was basically completely lost. In the 1986 debut title, the series creator Shigeru Miyamoto said that he wanted to capture the essence of what it was like to explore the Japanese wilderness, which was something he loved to do as a child, and the entire inspiration for the original NES game. And what we got was a game with no direction. Everything is cryptic, and it's never really clear what you're supposed to be doing. Fans of that particular title will say that the lack of any kind of direction was what made every discovery feel that much more special. Because you couldn't just Google the solution, you figured it all out by yourself. But the more critical players felt like the complete absence of direction made the game virtually unplayable. So Miyamoto's next Zelda game, Link to the Past, added a more omnipresent story and a direction to always be pointing the players towards. This eventually led us to Ocarina of Time, which stripped that sense of freedom away even further, until Majora's Mask, Wind Waker, Twilight Princess, and possibly the most egregiously of this, Skyward Sword, became strictly linear experiences with exactly one intended direction to head. You do what the game tells you to do, otherwise you don't beat it. And a lot of people didn't like that. It's almost the exact inverse of the criticisms of the 1986 title, where lack of direction was frustrating, but too much direction can be frustrating as well. Breath of the Wild felt like an overcorrection. They sacrificed tight dungeon design and a well-delivered story for complete player freedom.
You were just a reckless child. Always getting yourself hurt at every turn.
But absence really does make the heart grow fonder, and what was lost from Skyward Sword became that much more apparent. I view Tears of the Kingdom as a correction for a lot of the things that Breath of the Wild got wrong. We got the story back. We got more traditional dungeons back. There are interesting side quests that boil down to so much more than just, hey, can you grab 20 of a thing for me? So that begs the question, what did we lose? Breath of the Wild gets its name not from the story, but from the feeling you get when playing it. Miyamoto's childhood desire to have an adventure in the wilderness was finally realized. It's a very chill, contemplative experience, and one that you can take at your own leisure. And unfortunately, I just didn't really have that same feeling playing Tears of the Kingdom. Traversing the world has been streamlined to the point where it almost feels optional now. The observation towers are such a welcome addition, but they enable you to shoot yourself up into the air and paraglide to most destinations instead of meaningfully connecting with the world. There's just so much to do now. Part of the magic of Breath of the Wild is the way you could kind of screw around in the world for 2 hours without accomplishing anything in particular, and it still felt like you had a satisfying experience. I praised it for distracting you with interesting content in between main objectives, and in Tears of the Kingdom, it almost feels like a waste of time when you have so many things to do at practically every single point. In Breath of the Wild, when navigating the world, I found myself intentionally taking the lengthier horseback rides instead of fast travel because I just wanted to take in more of the scenery. And in Tears of the Kingdom, I took my horse out exactly one time, and I didn't even really use it for that long, because when I got to the slightest impasse, I built this flying bike that everybody else likes using, and I got where I wanted to go in half the time. Aside from traversal, there are so many new ways to approach combat, with so many different options to just try stuff. But I kind of got overwhelmed by choice and stuck with the same 5 or 6 items I knew I could count on instead of ever trying anything new. I was just so focused on checking off the objectives that it never really felt like I had the room to take it all in. To answer the question I propose in the title of this video, I think there is a way to play this game the wrong way, and it's to rob yourself of the complete experience it's offering. There is so much to this game, and if you just focus on the bare minimum to complete quests, you're certainly not going to have a bad time. The main quests in particular are excellent. But it's not the way the game is supposed to be played. If the intended method of playing Skyward Sword was to follow the precise path laid out by the game's designers without ever deviating, the intended method of playing Tears of the Kingdom is to just slow down and take it in as you go. There's no rush to complete it. Heck, they even built that into the story. I won't spoil exactly what's going on with it, but by the time you jump off the Great Sky Island, you already know that Zelda is fine. You don't need to feel like you're wasting your time by not rescuing her. I have a lot more I'd like to say about this game, but for the sake of this video, I'll just leave you with this. Tears of the Kingdom is a sandbox with a story to tell. If you want to experience it correctly, the best way to do that is to pace yourself. There's no rush. They spent almost 6 years making this game, so do yourself a favor and take your time. It's not going anywhere. So, this was supposed to be an easy video that I could finish over a weekend, since it's been a hot minute since we uploaded anything to the channel, and it was not that at all. The other gameplay videos we've done were recorded in bulk first, then a script was written about what we recorded, so the editing came together pretty quickly. With this one, I wrote and recorded the script, captured a couple hours of miscellaneous gameplay footage, and I very quickly realized that that was going to be a recipe for a visually uninteresting video. You would be surprised how difficult it was to put this video together. This shot right here, it took like 45 minutes for 10 seconds of video. And as I record this outro, my editor is currently pulling his hair out trying to troubleshoot an issue with the paper crumpled, uncrumpled transition that you've seen throughout the video. Actually, if you're at all interested in some behind-the-scenes stuff, please do leave a comment, because I legitimately have no idea if any of you would watch that. Anyway, we've got a page with like 20 video ideas that we want to make. We're just both very busy people, so the more likes and comments and stuff, you know how it goes.